One evening, Percy was bringing empty stone trucks from the harbour. He was tired of his quarrel with Thomas and wanted to be friends again. He had had a good day and was feeling extra pleased with himself. He was so busy thinking how he would tell Thomas and Toby about his expert handling of the trucks that he forgot to keep a good lookout. Too late, he saw a broken branch hanging over the line straight in front of him. He tried to stop. The branch hit his smoke box and broke away and crashed to the ground. "Ouch!" he exclaimed a moment later. Percy was more startled than hurt, but his front was still sore when they reached the shed. "It's your own fault," said Thomas unsympathetically. "You should keep a better lookout. I've no patience with you." "Pooh," retorted Percy, huffily. He forgot his good resolution and talked to Toby for the rest of the evening. Percy didn't speak to Thomas the next day either. "I say, Toby," he said in the shed that evening, "what's a drip, do you know?" Toby pondered. "It's when rain comes through a hole in your cab and fireman hasn't got time to mend it," he decided at last. "That's silly," objected Percy. "I heard a boy on the platform call his friend one this afternoon. I'm sure he couldn't have come through a hole in my cab," he added earnestly. Thomas was tired of being ignored. "That's different," he interrupted loftily. "The boy just thought his friend was being a coward, or silly, or a spoilsport." Percy thought about this. "So if," he suggested reflectively, "if you stopped me from doing something nice, would you be a drip, Thomas?" "You're the drip," answered Thomas crossly. "Now go to sleep like a sensible engine and stop talking nonsense." Percy was offended. Instead of going to sleep, he became even more determined to pay Thomas out. When Thomas set out along the valley, he was trying to make up for lost time. Suddenly, there was a loud bang, and something hard hit the bottom of his left-hand water tank. "Ouch!" exclaimed Thomas, and stopped. As he did so, he felt water splashing cold against his wheels. "One of your side rods has broken," said his driver. "It's swung up and punctured your tank. We'll have to get help." Percy was shunting. The station master came up. "Leave those trucks, please, Percy," he said. "Thomas has got a hole in his water tank. There's water dripping everywhere, and he can't get home on his own." Percy was still cross with Thomas. "I won't go," he said. "Thomas called me a drip. Let him jolly well stay there and drip himself." "But what about Annie and Clarabelle and the passengers?" reminded Percy's driver. "Do they deserve to stay out all night too?" Percy was sorry at once. "I forgot them," he said. "We must rescue them in case they turn into drips too." He hurried away. He found Thomas near the river. Everyone was glad to see him, and the passengers thanked him for coming. "I'm sorry I was rude," said Thomas, as Percy helped him back to the shed. "That tank of mine turned me into a bigger drip than we expected, didn't it? Can we be friends again, please?" Percy was delighted. "The bridge across the river needs repair," the Fat Controller told the engines. "I shall have to make a weight limit across it for a while. Percy and Daisy will be all right, and Toby too, but Thomas is too heavy." Thomas looked anxious. "How would you like to go and help Edward?" suggested the Fat Controller. "Can Annie and Clarabelle come?" asked Thomas. The Fat Controller shook his head. "They'll be needed here, I'm afraid," he said. Daisy can't carry all your passengers on her own. Percy promised to look after Annie and Clarabelle, but they were sorry to see Thomas go. To cheer Thomas up, Edward took him to see Bill and Ben, the twin engines who lived at the China Clay Harbour. "Oh dear, not another blue engine," said Bill cheekily. "No, but seriously, Edward," said Bill, "why doesn't the Fat Controller paint engines a proper colour, like us, for instance?" Thomas let off steam indignantly. "Let me tell you," he began. "All right, you two," laughed Edward. "Go and move those trucks, or there won't be room for any more." Bill and Ben, unabashed, went off happily. "You just don't have to take them too seriously," explained Edward. Thomas smiled ruefully. "I wish I knew how you deal with them," he said. Near the harbour, the line crossed a lane. The crossing had no gates. The lane led to a farm which made butter and supplied eggs and milk to shops in the town. One morning, the farmer had difficulty starting his lorry. He did it at last, but the lorry jerked along in fits and starts. The farmer was worried about his load of milk and butter and eggs. "That milk will be churned to butter soon," he muttered to himself as he neared the level crossing. The lorry lurched across the rails. The back wheels were just clear when its engine made a noise like a tired sheep and stopped. The back of the lorry was still jutting out over the railway line. The farmer struggled to start it again, but it would not go. He had just got down to telephone for help when he heard a train approaching. Thomas wasn't going fast. When he saw the lorry, he set his brakes hard, but he couldn't stop. He hit the lorry with a loud crash. Splintered wood flew everywhere, and eggs, butter, and milk were catapulted over Thomas. "Ugh!" he exclaimed and stopped. "Just look at my poor old lorry," said the farmer, emerging from behind the hedge where he'd been sheltering. "What a way to make an omelette!" The driver made sure that Thomas wasn't hurt, then stood back and surveyed the mess. He began to laugh. "It's not funny," said Thomas crossly. An egg yolk trickled down his nose and burst on his buffer. "You're not standing where I am," said his driver. "You look just like a scrambled egg, Thomas." "Well, if a scrambled egg feels as sticky and wet as I do, then it's very uncomfortable," said Thomas. "Please clean me." Both driver and fireman tried hard, but the heat of Thomas's boiler had cooked the eggs and they were stuck fast. "Sorry, Thomas," said his driver at last. "We can't block the line any longer. We shall have to go on." At the end of the line, Thomas was taken to Bill and Ben's yard to be cleaned. The twins were there. "Hello," said Ben. "What's this?" "Must be a new engine," said Bill. Ben inspected the arrival carefully. "No, Bill," he said, "that's not a new engine. It's Thomas." "But it's our colour, Ben, and Thomas doesn't think our colour is proper for an engine." They heard a grinding noise. "Are your joints stiff, Bill?" asked Ben. But it wasn't Bill's joints. It was Thomas, gnashing his teeth. "Driver says the Fat Controller's coming home tomorrow," said James a week later. Gordon grunted. He wasn't anxious to see the Fat Controller. "I must do well today," he said to himself as he waited to start the express. "A good run today might help if the Fat Controller hears about it." Things did not begin well, though. Thanks to a last-minute passenger, they were late starting. Which meant that Gordon missed his path at the junction and was delayed there too. But with a clear run after that, they flashed through Edward's station, going splendidly. They were halfway up the hill when there was a clatter beneath Gordon's cab. Suddenly, he felt a blast of cold air in his middle, as if there were a gap between his boiler and the cab. "Oof!" he gasped. "What's happened?" The fireman looked at his fire. There was a gaping hole in the middle where the fire bars had collapsed, and a large part of the fire had disappeared. "You've lost part of your fire, Gordon," the fireman explained. "What a place to do it." Already Gordon was feeling weak. Without a full fire, his steam pressure and speed fell quickly. But his driver knew what to do. "Find the biggest piece of coal you can and put it across the hole," he told the fireman. "That will stop some of the cold air from getting in, and we'll be able to hold steam better. But hurry, or the air will beat us." The fireman hurried. A large lump of coal lay near the front of the tender. Quickly he moved it into place with his shovel and a long steel bar. Gordon felt better at once. "Now build the fire gently around the edges," said the driver, and as the fireman did so, the driver adjusted Gordon's controls to make the best use of his steam. "Right, Gordon," he said when the fireman had finished. "Now it's up to you." Gordon tried his hardest, but it was tough going. "I must do it, I must do it," he told himself as he pounded up the hill. He had stuck here once before and was determined not to fail again. Poor Gordon was getting very breathless. "I will do it, I will do it," he panted, but he was careful not to pant too loudly in case he blew away what was left of his fire. He shut his eyes and struggled on. At last Gordon felt that the slope was easier to climb. Cautiously he opened one eye. Yes, he was nearly at the top. "I've done it! I've done it!" he gasped triumphantly. The fireman mopped his brow. "That was splendid, Gordon," he said, "and now you deserve a rest." A signalman turned them into a goods loop and telephoned the works for a pilot engine to be prepared. While they waited, the passengers got out and told Gordon what a useful engine he was. Oko was at the works to help, and the two engines finished the journey without further trouble. At the end of the line, the fat controller was waiting for them. To Gordon's surprise, he was smiling. "Thank you, Boko," he said. "And thank you, Gordon, for a splendid effort. I am pleased with your work today, though certain, other things leave much to..." But just then, a whistle blew, and the fat controller had to hurry to his carriage. Once again, poor Gordon was left in suspense. The Express is a long, heavy train. Gordon usually pulls it. It is an important train too, and must always run whatever happens. If Gordon is ill or busy somewhere else, James or Henry have the chance to pull it. They try their best and do it well. Too well, perhaps, because sometimes the importance of the occasion goes to their smoke boxes and makes them boastful. One day, Henry was feeling pleased with himself. He had run the Express to time, and the fat controller had congratulated him. "I don't know what the fat controller would do without me," he said importantly in the shed that evening. "Have a care," warned Douglas. "Too much puff about yourself, and you'll maybe run out of puff one day." "Pooh," scoffed Henry. "I pulled 2 trains and a failed diesel once, and the fat controller said I was an enterprising engine." "Aye, I mind it well," agreed Donald. "I took the goods train on, you recall, but Dougie is right. puff goes before a fail. The Scottish twins were wasting their own puff, of course, because Henry took no notice whatsoever. Little later, the railway had to begin using a new sort of coal. It was dusty and burned with clouds of thick black smoke. The Fat Controller was cross, and the engines didn't like it either. Filthy rubbish, they grumbled. The new coal made more ash too. Before long, all the engines began to have pains in their smoke boxes. Hot ash collected there and gave them the most awful indigestion. One evening, Henry felt dreadful when he got back to the shed. His fireman had to clean an enormous pile of ash from his smoke box before he felt better. But the next day, Henry could not make steam properly. He struggled to Edward's station, but could go no further. Douglas was there. "I can't breathe," Henry wheezed. "Out a puff, are you?" asked Douglas. "Did I say we didn't warn you?" Henry couldn't answer. Douglas took his train for him. The fireman cleared away more ashes, but when he tried to close Henry's smokebox door, it did not make the airtight fit that it should have done. "Those hot ashes have bent your smokebox door," he said. "Air is coming in so that you can't breathe properly through your fire. But I know how we could cure that." He filled a bucket with water. Then he fetched all the old newspapers he could find from the station bookstall. The driver helped him tear them into strips, which they soaked in the water. "What are you doing?" asked Henry anxiously. "Making something called papier-mâché," explained the driver. "When this paper is soggy enough, we shall paste it in your air leak so that you can breathe better. It won't last forever, but it will get us home." "Oh," said Henry unhappily. His driver was right. When the job was done, Henry felt much better, and even the driver and fireman were surprised how well he steamed. "We'll have to get the Fat Controller to make it permanent," they joked. Henry went very carefully and reached the shed without mishap. His story was there before him, of course. Donald and Douglas didn't say anything, but now and then made sort of breathless, puffing noises. Henry thought they must have a very odd sense of humour. Thomas stood at Farquhar, the top station of his branch line. He had run round Annie and Clarabel after the morning journey and was enjoying a short rest before the run back down the valley. His driver and fireman stood beside his cab talking to the guard who brought startling news. "Did you know that the station master was burgled last night?" he was asking. Thomas's driver shook his head. "You don't say," he exclaimed. "I didn't know he had anything worth stealing." "He's won cups for gardening," exclaimed the fireman. "All taken, and then the scoundrels had the cheek to pinch his car to carry them away in." "Not that new one he's so proud of," said the driver. The guard nodded, and at that moment the signal rose to show that the line was clear. The driver and fireman climbed into Thomas's cab. The guard blew his whistle, waved his green flag, and got into Clarabel, and Thomas set off. By the time they were through the tunnel, the train was running nicely. Road and railway were beside each other here, with only a stream between them. Thomas remembered his race with Bertie the bus. He'd only won because he could go through the hill, while Bertie had to go over it.
"Peep, peep," whistled Thomas at every station. "Get in quickly, please."
At that moment, Percy appeared. Thomas told Percy and Toby what the guard had said. "The Fat Controller wouldn't allow it," Percy remarked. "I can tell you." "Sorry, Percy," said Thomas's driver. "We must be off. Time and the Fat Controller wait for no man." Thomas puffed happily along his branch line. Suddenly, a flash of colour on the road ahead caught his eye. He tried to go faster to look more closely. "Steady, Thomas," said his driver. "There's plenty of time." "Can't we get closer to that car?" panted Thomas. "It looks like station masters to me." "Lots of cars look like that," laughed the driver. But he opened the regulator and they began to draw level. There were 2 men in the car. They waved when they saw Thomas and tried to go faster. "That's the car all right, Thomas," said the fireman, "and those 2 must be the thieves. But we can't stop them, and they'll be gone long before the next station." "We need pencil, paper, and something to put a note in," said the driver. "We'll throw a message out at the next signal box." Quickly, he wrote the note, and they put it in the fireman's empty lunch tin. Then, drawing ahead of the car, Thomas whistled to attract the signalman's attention. They slowed so that the fireman could throw the box up to him, and as they went past, both driver and fireman shouted "Police!" at the top of their voices. By now, the stolen car had gone well ahead, and Thomas did not see it again. But the signalman telephoned police headquarters at once, and the thieves were stopped at a roadblock about 10 miles further on. That afternoon, the Fat Controller travelled in Annie to Farquhar. When he got there, he and the station master climbed onto a porter's trolley. They told the passengers the whole story, and the station master thanked Thomas, his driver, and his fireman for their prompt action. The passengers cheered loudly, and they cheered even more when they heard that the station master's gardening cups had all been found, undamaged, in a sack in the boot of the car. "A long time ago," said the Fat Controller, holding up his hand for silence, "Thomas showed how valuable he is to the smooth running of my railway. I am sure you will all agree that today he has once again proved himself to be a really useful engine."
$168 one on the front. Wait for me to go back there. Right, and
I think that children live these days in a very fast-paced world. But I don't think children really change. And that is that they need in their lives gentleness, they need comfort, they need fun, and they need stories that, whilst being entertaining for them, also help them to interpret the world.
I got really, really lucky and blessed. That's what I wanted. I wanted to make it so that any little child watching could feel that that's where they could go, that they weren't alone, and they were comforted, and that they were inspired. It's the moment when everyone becomes a storyteller.